Hey guys, it's Miss Binion here to talk about the Gilded Age. First thing you want to do today is go ahead and set up your C notes. Here's mine. And you want to go ahead and write the essential question, which is highlighted in yellow for you. Why was the Gilded Age filled with so much political and economic corruption? So we're going to talk about the Gilded Age, which comes right after Reconstruction. The Gilded Age is also part of industrial America, so if you've learned about the Industrial Revolution, then you'll be pretty far ahead. All right, and also if you scroll down, we are on Learning Target 1.6. Explain the causes and consequences of the Gilded Age politics and the differing opinions between farmers, wage earners, and industrial capitalists. Okay, so we're going to cover that, as well as we might hit on analyzing the effect that major inventions had. All right, so let's get started. This video, hold on, there we go. All right, so this video is going to start for 1870 to 1900. So we know that this actually starts during Reconstruction, because Reconstruction doesn't end until 1877. So let's talk about the government. This is one of your vocab words. This is a very laissez-faire federal government. So what does laissez-faire mean? It just means that the government did very little domestically. The main duties of the federal government was to deliver the mail, to maintain taxes, national and military, conduct foreign policy. Really, what laissez-faire means is kind of what we call hands-off. Basically, the government does not get involved in business affairs or affairs that they're involved in today. So these are really the main things that the government did. So this was more of a less centralized government and more focused on states. And so that's going to bring us to the rise of political machines. Political machine is also one of your vocab words. It's on Quizlet. A political machine is an organized group of people that controlled activities of a political party. And so what they would do is they would give voters services, and then in return those voters would vote for them. So we call this machine because they ran the city pretty much. At the head of the political machine, you had the political city boss, like the party boss, and they were head of it. They controlled the jobs in police, fire, and sanitation departments. They gave money to fund large construction projects. And basically, this may sound like a good thing, but it's not a good thing. If you have, it's these basic like little tiny dictatorships. You have a boss that controls a community, and they control the money, they control the people, they control the jobs, and basically they would bribe people to vote for them. And so this was definitely not a good thing. So you could check out this political cartoon, and it shows that everybody is around the sun here, and the sun here would be the party boss. Okay? So political machine is an organized group of people that control the activities of a political party. So political machines loved immigrants during this time. Why? Because the immigrants never didn't vote, and they tried to sway votes by bribery. So this way they could get the immigrants out to the polls, but they would bribe them through intimidation and other means, such as giving them jobs and just by threatening them. So the political machines used their power to rig elections. They become wealthy from kickbacks, okay? So people pay them money and they get wealthy from those. Those are illegal payments. And they could control the police force to stay out of trouble. So they could commit crimes, and they have bribed the police force so they could get away with those crimes. So political machine, back then, if you wanted to go vote, they would give you the slip that says this is what you're going to vote. And now we have private elections, and we'll talk about that, secret elections, where you can go in and vote in secret, but back then you would have to get your ballot from the party boss, and then the party boss could track whether you voted for them or not. So one of the biggest party bosses was William N. Tweed. They call him Boss Tweed. So who was he? He was the head of Tammany Hall, which is New York's powerful democratic political machine. He led the Tweed Ring from 1869 to 1871. In his total time, he stole about $30 to $200 million. So Boss Tweed, like I said, is one of the most powerful ones. And what he would do is he would put his money into construction projects, or put the people's money into construction projects like the Brooklyn Bridge, and he would charge so much money and say that it costs, let's say, $50 million to make the Brooklyn Bridge, when in reality it only costs maybe $20 million, and he's pocketing the other $30 million. So that is sort of what the political bosses would do. Okay, so this is, I love this Facebook post that someone made of William Boss Tweed, and so you could just kind of look at it, and it's just funny talking about how he acts, okay, and him being a party boss. This is one of the most famous political cartoons of Boss Tweed, they call him the brains. What is his brains? The money is the brains, and basically that's all that he has on his head, is he's just worried about money. Okay, and so this was drawn by Thomas Nast, and Thomas Nast is one of the most famous political cartoonists during this age, and he is one of the reasons that Boss Tweed got caught. Okay, and we'll get to that in a minute. So Boss Tweed and Thomas Nast. So here's Thomas Nast down here. So we know he was the political boss, and Thomas Nast was the political cartoonist. He was very critical of political machines, and he's one of the only people that would speak out. At a time where it was very difficult for people to speak out about corruption, Thomas Nast was not afraid. He made lots of political cartoons, and Boss Tweed was known to say, you know, he would say, it doesn't bother me when people say bad things about me, but I don't like this Thomas Nast guy because he makes me look bad. And he didn't like that people could go look at a picture and see that this guy was manipulative. Alright, so here's some of Thomas Nast's photos that talk about Boss Tweed. And the funny thing about this is that when Boss Tweed was caught, he went to jail, he escaped and and went to Spain. And because of Thomas Nast's famous political cartoons, they were able to catch him in Spain. They knew what he looked like. And then he would go back to jail in America, and that's where he died. So, Gilded Age, basically, Industrial Revolution is this time period where it looks great on the outside. That's the gilded part. And inside, it's corrupt. You have a corrupt government that is just tearing at the seams. Politicians are corrupt. The business makers are corrupt. Everybody's corrupt. Okay, so we got to figure out how we're going to fix that. Why is that important? Because a lot of the things that we have today, a lot of the rules and laws, come out of this period. So one thing is the patronage or spoil system. This started back with Andrew Jackson, and y'all know how I feel about Andrew Jackson. He was giving government jobs to loyal party workers. So basically, if you got elected and you were my buddy, maybe I would make you Department of Education, even though maybe you didn't know how to read or write. That wouldn't make any sense, okay? So people were just getting jobs and they weren't qualified. And they call this graft, use position to get money from the government. Then this even comes to the president at the time, James Garfield, was assassinated by someone who was seeking to reform the spoils movement. And because of Garfield's death, the president, Chester Arthur, remember he's the guy with the fur coat, he took over and he signed the Pendleton Civil Service Act, which would say that you had to take a civil service reform test to pass and to get a job with the government. Okay, so where does this term Gilded Age come from? The origin of this. This is a period when corruption existed in society, and we know, we've already kind of talked about it. And it basically means something is golden and beautiful on the surface, but inside it's worthless. And that is what America is at this point. There's abuses in government and business. There's problems for immigrants, laborers, and farmers. We already know that there's problems between the races. And now I'm in the dark because I think the power went out in the school. Or maybe it just went out in my room. Anyways, the show must go on. So this term, Gilded Age, comes from a book that was written during the time period by Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner. And it's called The Gilded Age, and it kind of explains the corruptness of the age. And so that is basically where it came from. Okay? So let's run down a couple of the presidents from the Gilded Age. We're going to start with President Grant first. Let me find my mouse. This is Ulysses S. Grant. You need to make sure you write this down. 1869 to 1877. He took over office after Andrew Johnson, and that's where we left off before. So President Grant, his nickname was Waving the Bloody Shirt. So if we remember, President Grant was the Union general who they called him the Butcher because he was very let's say, very harsh in his tactics. He's a very popular war hero, and I know it's misspelled. He's part of the Republican Party. He wins the presidency by, and he gets 500,000 votes from the freed slaves, because the freed slaves can now vote. Of course they're going to vote for the Republican, because you remember the radical Republicans are the ones that are on their side. The Democrats are the ones from the South. The only problem with President Grant, when I say only, I mean a lot of problem, that he had very corrupt advisors. He had the Tweed ring going on under him, so that's Boss Tweed, and then he also had the whiskey ring, which was some of his advisors were importing whiskey without paying taxes on it. So he was a popular war hero, not so popular president. The other, another one that we'll cover, Rutherford B. Hayes, also known as Rutherford. He's from Ohio, and I put swing state anybody because Ohio is a swing state, just like you saw in the electoral college video. And basically, when you have a swing state, obviously they're going to vote for Ohio, so that's why he was chosen. They figure if they have the Ohio governor running, then Ohio will vote for him, and then they will get that swing state. He also had a very corrupt cabinet, and the cabinet were his advisors. So if you didn't know that, make sure you write that down. In the Hayes-Tilden race, we've already learned about this. The race was so close that they both had to re-campaign, and that will bring us to the Compromise of 1877. So basically, Hayes took office, and the North removed their federal troops from the South. And this is so important. If you didn't write this down in the last video, write it down now. This is the end of Reconstruction, the Compromise of 1877. What is the end of Reconstruction? The Compromise of 1877. 1877, end of Reconstruction. Okay, I'll stop saying it now. The next one we have is James Garfield. They called him the Shocker because he came in and he was ready to clean up scandal, as the other presidents didn't really do anything about the scandal. He's also from Ohio, which is interesting because, there's my power again, I don't know what's happening, because it's a swing state, so they were going to vote for him. His running mate is Chester Arthur, and he was assassinated on September 19th. He survived 11 weeks before he died, and he only served in office 5 months. The importance of him, make sure you get this down, is that he shocked politicians into reforming Andrew Jackson's spoil system. And because of him, here's a picture. Because of him, Chester Arthur is able to take on those reforms. So they called him the reformer. He prosecuted corruption and fraud cases. He pushed through the Pendleton Act, which was good because the federal government could no longer give money to politicians through the Pendleton Act. Remember, it's a civil service reform. And also made it so that, like I said, the government couldn't give money to the politicians. But the problem is that the politicians, where do they get the money from? They go to corporations. Okay? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in class. He was such a reformer in government, he offended his own party. Like, he reformed so many things, his own party was like, chill, dude, you're reforming too much, okay? Which is great for the people. He was great for the people. He was rushed out of the Republican nomination because they were upset that he had prosecuted so many fraud cases, which is kind of backwards, and he died of a hemorrhage. Grover Cleveland is next. They call him Grover the Good, even though he was very involved in a scandalous affair. So he was from New York, and he won by a very slim margin. This is the first Democrat in office since the Civil War. Now, he comes from New York. He doesn't come from the South, so it's not like you're going to have a white Southerner coming in. It's a little bit different. He was very fair, and he hoped to lower tariffs. Tariffs, remember, are taxes on exports and imports. Make sure you know that, because that's going to come up all year. He actually had a surplus of $125 million a year, so when we talk about how the government is in debt now, he actually had a surplus of things that weren't spent. He threatened monopolies. He did not get renominated because he was cutting down on monopolies. So he was not reelected by the Republican Party, which is interesting. Then we have Benjamin Harrison, Republican Party. His party bought votes for $20 in swing states. Tell me that's not scandalous. It is very scandalous. It's like you walking into the election center and someone handing you $20 to vote for somebody. Also, they call this the $1 billion Congress because he's the first president that will appoint or allot $1 billion to be spent in Congress. And that's going to be it for these notes. Just take a little gander here at these questions because that's basically what you're going to be asked on the next time I see you. And make sure that I do want you to go ahead and do your annotation and your left side, and you can come in class for your summary. But when I check your work, I want to see your left side and your annotation. I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you next class period. Make sure that you write any questions on the side because you'll be writing those up on the board if you have any questions. And it's always good to ask questions because I'll go over questions before we have our quiz. See you guys in class. Bye.